Welcome to eSpeakers TV. My name is Joe Heaps. I'm with eSpeakers, and I've got special guests today, Terry Brock, CSP, CPAE, and recent Cavett Award winner, and Alan Stevens, FPSA, PSA, and PSA Founders Award recipient. And we're so glad to have these two fine gentlemen on, and longtime speakers, spoken all around the world. And so this is a really special segment of eSpeakers TV. And Alan's going to flip the tables on Terry and ask Terry some questions, a little bit about being a recent Cavett Award recipient. And I'll turn the time over to you, Alan. Go ahead.
Joe, thank you very much indeed. And what a pleasure and an honor it is to be on with you and with Terry. And Terry, hello there. It's good to catch up with you again, my friend.
Great to see you, Alan. Always good to catch up with you. Let's have some fun.
Okay, so we talked there, Joe mentioned the Cavett Award, the spirit of Cavett, named after Cavett Robert, founder of the National Speakers Association. You won this award, this prestigious award, and well done for that. If I can congratulate you again on behalf of the speaking world, Terry. It was well deserved, and we loved it when you stood on stage and gave that acceptance speech. We'll talk about that in a moment. Firstly, tell us about the spirit of Cavett and how it inspires you and what you do.
Well, I think the spirit of Cavett is something we hear about a lot in NSA because it's the idea of giving to others, and Cavett was very famous for making a bigger pie. He would say, instead of worrying about how you're going to slice it up, let's make a bigger one. I like that concept, the idea of let's figure out how we can make more for everybody. And the idea of what Cavett did, he gave a lot of what he has done. I also think that it goes even beyond that. And my acceptance speech, it just hit me. I mean, we don't get a chance to make these, have time to prepare for these. Alan, you've trained a lot of people in how to speak. You know that there's always the speech you prepare, and then the speech you give, and then the speech you wish you would have given. I had those three elements, except the first one didn't exist. You know, there was no preparing for it. I was scared. I was shocked, and, you know, I was really surprised with it. But I thought, okay, what am I going to do? And I'm walking up there going, what am I going to say? Hey, and it's got to be pretty good because, you know, there's all these people that are watching.
We were wondering the same thing, Terry.
Yeah, I go, what am I going to do? I don't know. But it hit me. I remember years ago, I was talking to Lee Robert, one of Cavett's daughters, and she was talking about what Cavett did in his day when he was working with these newfangled technologies called audio cassettes. They were new at that time. And he decided, let's take those and use them to capture the voices of speakers. Now, that was unusual at that time. Now we look at it and go, well, of course. But what he did is he pushed the technology. And I think that's part of the spirit of Cavett. The idea of let's find out what's out there, what we can do to help other people, and do it in more than just what has been done before. Before, you'd have a raging or a rousing orator that would tell you stories. It would be wonderful. And then you go back home going, I don't know what he said, but it was really good. Now they can record it. And so I think what we need to do is in our day say, okay, what new technology is out there that's practical? Not just because it's a new technology, but because we can use this and we can help other people with it. And I think that's really what the spirit of Cavett is all about. It's something that is giving, it's helping others, but also looking at practical ways that we can help the world.
That's really interesting, Terry. I mean, because you're talking about taking the spirit of Cavett and taking it forward. You know, moving it forward. You know, both you and I are great fans of new technology and shiny objects and that sort of thing. We love testing those sorts of things out. And I guess that's what Cavett would have done in his day. And like you, I've toured around the archives of NSA and seen some of those old things. They're even, what are those things, long playing things there were at one time.
Yeah, I think they're called those records and things like that.
With a hole in the middle. I've no idea.
Crank it up like this and it plays. I don't know. You know, they had those a while back.
That's right. So, I mean, all those things existed, and now we use different technologies. But you alluded to the spirit of Cavett there and talked about the fact that he was always experimenting and trying things. And it's not just in America, is it? We have this now globally of the Global Speaking Federation, of which I was honored to be president a few years back. And you speak internationally a lot. How do you think the spirit of Cavett has spread out across the globe?
I think it's done it in a wonderful way because when you think about what we're talking about now, we have the Global Speakers Federation, of course. And Alan, you've been a president of that. I've loved being involved in that, speaking in different places, because it's kind of like, it might sound trite, but we've got brothers and sisters around the world, people that understand this wonderfully unique profession called speaking. And we're able to share ideas that work. And also there's enough of a nuance that's just a little bit different in each country so that we learn even more. We're all born and raised in a particular place. For me, I was born and raised in the Midwest in the United States. And you grow up knowing this is the way things work. It's wonderful for me when I would go over to the UK And I got a chance to be there and listen to, first of all, a different language, because you speak British and we speak American. You know, they are two different languages.
Yeah.
Joe, you might have noticed that in some of the travels that you've done to the people that you work with.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, that's just one of the fun. We have fun about that. We joke about it and laugh. I say the same thing for our friends, our mates over in Australia, that they speak Australian, we speak American. But seriously, it's a great way for us to learn and to enrich our lives. And I think the spirit of Cavett permeates into that internationally, so that we become much more inclusive. We become more inquisitive. Rather than going in saying, well, my country's the right one, da, 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 and whatever country it might be saying this is right, I think we do much better when we can say, tell me about that. I hadn't heard it from that point of view, because we think that it should be done this and this and this way for whatever issue it might be. Tell me how you think about it. And I find that's where we really grow. We become better people when we can open our minds to looking at situation from a different perspective. Doesn't mean we're necessarily going to change. We don't have to, but it does mean that we're going to be open. And somehow I'm just thinking, Alan, if countries around the world started talking to each other more, trading back and forth, doing business with each other a whole lot more, we'd have a lot less wars.
Wouldn't that be a wonderful thing?
Yeah, it'd be just a wonderful thing. Instead of, hey, we disagree with these people, therefore let's go bomb them. Wait a minute. Maybe, what if we try to hear it from their point of view? It's one of my heroes is Andrew Carnegie, who came over to the United States from Scotland. And he lived his life making a lot of money. And his philosophy was, I think, a pretty good one: make as much money as you can the first part of your life, and the second part of your life, give it away where it will do the greatest amount of good and the least amount of harm. Because giving someone a lot of money can do a lot of harm. He died brokenhearted only because he tried with everything he had, all of his money and everything, to stop World War I. It was one of the most devastating tragedies, many of us think, of the 20th century. Never should have taken place. And yet he tried what he could. His idea was that we would have so much commerce with each other that we wouldn't go to war ever again. Well, I think his idea was a little bit premature. But I'm thinking we could still attain that today, because we have the technology now, like we're doing here. Joe, you're there in the Salt Lake City area. Alan, you're over there in London. I'm here in Orlando, Florida. We're having a conversation as if we were seated around a table. And I think the spirit of Cavett is we're sharing together. We do this often, and I think if we can increase that communication, increase the commerce, increase the cultural activities, etc., we'll be doing just fine. As long as we watch out when we have France and England competing. That's a whole different thing.
Well, they didn't get to compete this year, though. That's a sore subject, Terry. Jeez.
Yeah, we're not going to talk politics on this.
Yeah, we're not going to talk that right now.
No, we're not going there. But again, let's stick with the international dimension for just for a little while, Terry. And as I say, you've traveled a great deal, and you've talked about the fact that the spirit of Cavett brings us together, and we're brothers and sisters around the world, and we have friends. You and I have friends all over the world, which is just a wonderful thing. But nevertheless, there are differences between us, and there are things that you can say in certain places and ways you can behave in certain places that mean, you know, different things to different people, as you already referred to our, you know, two nations separated by a single language, as Churchill called the Americans and the British. Yep. So what differences have you noticed when you're moving around from place to place, from country to country, where you think, well, I thought that would work, but it didn't, or that's working better than I thought it would? What have you observed?
I've observed that, first of all, it's a wonderful thing to do that. And you have to really do a lot of listening. And I think wherever you're going, you want to do your research. As much as you can, talk to people who are local. Tell them, here's what I'm going to say. Or if you can, if you had a good rapport with someone, like we do with many speakers, say, here's a story that I want to tell. Or here's a joke that I want to use, particularly a joke. Yes. Because if you have a friend, you could say, you know, tell me what you think honestly. And if they listen to that and go, oh no, you used a word that in your country is perfectly fine, but over here, it actually means something completely different. And audiences would go and gasp on that. I think we need to explore that. And a lot of that you learn only by experimenting and trying. I remember when I was over in Japan at times, they were talking to me about, I was at a karaoke talking with some friends, and they were saying, well, there's some of the differences are, but what you Americans don't know is, and they took their hands and made a certain form, not with the middle fingers we would hear in the United States, which means something very bad, but they used a completely different way. I'm not even going to do it because there might be some people that would be offended, but they said, ooh, don't say that. And I remember as I did it, and like there was a lady over there watching, and she went like this real quickly, as if, you know, hiding her finger, and something that we would look at and go, well, that's nothing. But I think the point is there's certain activities, certain gestures, certain phrases that you might use that could be offensive to someone. And so you want to be aware of those as much as you can and keep a mental registry going so that as you know, to go, oh, don't do that. Or here's something, for instance, I would learn when I was going to Japan, back in the late 80s, I would go there, my Japanese friends would laugh hilariously when they say, here's how the Americans bow. And I'm going to try it here on video, where the Americans would bow like this, and the Japanese would just roar with laughter. And I say, why is that funny? They say, oh, you're supposed to bow like this. And you'll notice that my eyes left you right now. I'm going down like this. Whereas if I bow like this, Japanese consider that hilarious. And I thought, I will need to remember that, because then when I go to Japan, I go, well, don't do it like those silly Americans, those gaijin means foreigner, gaijin Americans, and do it like this. And they would laugh. I thought, this is good to know, because I can do it poking fun at Americans and do it that way. Just like I go to Australia. And I remember, I forget who was telling me that when I go to Australia, I used to go to Brisbane when I go to Australia. Now I go to Brisbane, because the Australians pronounce it Brisbane, not Brisbane, but many Americans will miss it. And so they go, aha, you're saying that word funny. And I think every place around the planet has certain words like, hey, even in Michigan, we have a city there called Ypsilanti. That's how we pronounce it, Ypsilanti. It's spelled with a Y, and many people look at it and call Ypsilanti. And so little nuances there are all over the world. What we can do as speakers is learn those and then have fun with it in a polite, professional way to poke fun at ourselves and to increase a bond with others even more.
It hardly ever happens in the UK, Terry. Of course, we never have to correct anybody when they say Buckingham. Can you point me to Buckingham Palace?
What's the right way to say that, Alan?
Buckingham.
Yeah.
Buckingham.
Hey, let me interject something here. I just have a question for you, Terry, and that is, isn't that one of the things that a speaker should really take serious as they're speaking to a new group? Like, know the names of the cities and the proper pronunciations of different things in that country. I mean, that's what we're talking about here, right?
Exactly. You know, it's like you got to know your audience. Yeah, you've got to know your audience. It's almost like, I remember back in this is not a political statement, but back during the election when Donald Trump was running for president, he was speaking at a very well-known Christian college. And so he wanted to endear himself to the Christians there. And he would say, well, like, I love the Bible, I read the Bible, and like it says in 2 Corinthians, da-da-da-da. Well, they were all going, what's he saying here? Now, he just saw it as, you know, the 2 Corinthians as it is. And 2 Corinthians is the way you pronounce it. You know, how Christians will pronounce that. He's trying to say, hey, I'm one of you. I read 2 Corinthians also. And it's like blatant. If you do something like that, audiences are going to go, you're not really with us. We can tell you're trying to pretend that you are, and you're really not, or you're making a colossal error. So, Joe, I agree with you. I think we have to study that and research our audiences.
Very, very good point, John. I'm not trying to blow smoke at Joe, but it just occurred to me that eSpeakers is something that brings speakers together around the world, because lots of them use the same eSpeakers database. So
yes, they do. Thank you, Alan, for the nice compliment there and plug, I guess.
I think maybe I should ask you one final question, Terry, and this might be a tricky one, but I'm sure you're going to cope with this. And that you've now won the Cavett Award. You know, it's the pinnacle of speaking, the most prestigious award delivered by NSA. Where on earth do you go from here?
I think it's a new beginning for me because I feel that Cavett has done so much to help us, and he still does that even years after he left us. And I feel that for me, it's a way to look at it in practical matters of what does the spirit of Cavett mean now? We're heading into the 2020s. And so we've got a world that's going to be different. There's going to be great opportunities. There's also going to be some challenges. I mean, I wish I would have come up with that, but Jim Rohn said that years ago. And he's right, that there's going to be new opportunities. And I think the spirit of Cavett, the idea of let me find ways I can help you. Let me find ways that we can make a bigger pie for everyone. It's really what we saw in the book, The Blue Ocean Strategy. Instead of fighting in there where all the other fish are in the red waters, what you want to do is go over here where it's a blue ocean, where nobody is, but there's a lot of opportunity. And somehow I think if we embrace that philosophy and that way of living, we'd see Cavett there in the back with his thumbs up going, yep, that's the way to do it.
That's a lovely message to end on, Terry. And can I just say thanks to you, and obviously thanks to Joe for the honor and the privilege of being able to come on to eSpeakers TV and talk to you. And I'm sure that we will be sharing an adult beverage, as you like to call it, somewhere in the world soon. In fact, all 3 of us, hopefully.
Yes.
That would be absolutely grand. So I'll just hand back to you, Joe, and say thanks again.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate you guys carving out a few minutes of time in your busy schedules.